Morning, everyone. This is the Wednesday morning, July 24th, 2019 session of the Portland City Council. Good morning, Carla. Please call the roll.
Good morning. Hardesty, Udaley, Fritz.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Wheeler.
Here. And now we'll hear from Robert on the rules of order and decorum. Robert's rules.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. If it does not, you may be ruled out of order. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Please remain seated in council chambers unless entering or exiting. If you are filming the proceedings, please do not use bright lights or disrupt the meeting. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruptions may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting.
Yes.
After being ejected, a person who fails to leave the meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Thank you. Commissioner Fish.
Mayor, we have some special guests here today, and I'm going to ask them to stand. If you are part of the Iraqi Youth Leadership Program, would you please stand? World Oregon is hosting the Iraqi Youth Leadership Program, a U.S. State Department-funded program that brings Iraqi high school students to the U.S. for summer exchanges to explore themes of leadership development, civic rights and responsibilities, respect for diversity, and community engagement. They've been in Portland since July 11th, and the theme of their program this year is peace building and community resilience. Mayor, can we suspend the rules?
We'll suspend the rules.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
We appreciate your being here, and we appreciate the spirit in which you're here. This is a time where more peace and unity would be a good thing. And we appreciate you coming here to learn more about our community. And I hope when you leave with good thoughts. So welcome and thank you for being here. First item, communications. Carla.
Item 685, a request of Tamara DeRitter to address council regarding safety concerns in the neighborhood due to the lack of an assigned police officer.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Tamara DeRitter. I'm the chairperson for Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, and it's a pleasure to be here. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you this morning on this topic. On February 5th, our Rose City Park Neighborhood Association Board directed me to write this letter to the City Council. That was following a presentation by the North Precinct on the status of public safety in our January general membership meeting. Unfortunately, due to my battle with cancer and your public comments schedule, I'm only able to speak with you right now. In January, Sergeant Jennifer Butler reported that there were not enough police officers to assign a permanent neighborhood response team officer to our area. This caused grave concern by the 60 participants at that meeting, and then was reflected in the board's direction to me as the chair. The sergeant stated the reason for the problem was due to the reduction of police officers because of the retirements. Over the past 5 years, our neighborhood has experienced a 300% increase in car thefts, a 400% increase in other forms of thefts and burglaries in our neighborhood. The presentation provided by the police gave no reason to believe the situation would improve under the current conditions. We strongly urge you to return the number of police officers to adequate levels of at least 17 officers per 10,000 residents. Support geographically assigned community police officers as a #1 priority for neighborhood livability. It is vital that these officers stay in these assigned areas long enough to understand the community dynamics and become engaged with its community leaders. Maybe a minimum of 5 years assignment. Listen to our police officers' concerns as they're dealing with revolving door for thieves and larceny arrests, and a need to reduce the time spent dealing with lawsuits on top of their regular workloads. Encourage the neighborhood response team officers to provide regular updates to the neighborhood meetings in their assigned areas, and let the neighborhood associations help reduce crime through grants for high crime areas. We do understand that the NRT officer, Bob Boylan, has been temporarily assigned to our neighborhood. We would like to see that as a permanent assignment. Thank you.
Very
Can
good.
I just,
Thank you. Commissioner Fish.
Tamara, you've been battling cancer, and you've been in our thoughts and our prayers, and it's great to see you. You look terrific.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm beating it. It's a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, that same that everyone gets whenever they've been around Roundup, apparently, which I haven't been, but it must have been on the food I ate. So it's working, and I'm just praying for you as well.
Well, we're glad you're back on your feet, and you're active in your neighborhood, and you're here today. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and I know that you and Robert King have connected in my office as well, so we'll keep that dialogue going as well.
Okay,
Thanks
great.
for being
Thank you
here.
very much.
Appreciate it.
All right, take care.
Next person, please, Carla.
Item 686, request of Ron Glanville to address council regarding Outer Halsey Safety Project and maintenance of stop signs at Northeast 132nd and San Rafael.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I won't be speaking about the stop signs because it's actually been fixed. My name is Ron Glanville, and I serve as the chair of Russell Neighborhood Association and the board of East Portland Neighbors, both the past president and the recording secretary. Vice chair of the PDX-CAC, the Port of Portland Airport Community Advisory Committee. I'm a member of EPAP, have served as chair of East Portland Neighborhood News, which was formerly published by EPN, and various committees, including EPIM, which is East Portland in Motion. And that's kind of where we start today. I'm here today to advocate for the Outer Halsey Safety Project, which is an ongoing project of PBOT that is almost a 10-year history from the time of EPIM placing it on the second tier of East Portland projects. The project focus is on the sidewalk infills on Halsey from Northeast 125th to 161st Avenue. This project has been renamed, changed, redesigned, morphed, delayed several times. It is a paramount safety project for Outer East Portland, affecting thousands of people in the Wilkes, Wilson, and Hazelwood neighborhoods. Currently, there are about 50 to 60 blocks of this section of Halsey without sidewalks. There are curbs and driveways, but in between is gravel, dirt, weeds, and shrubs, making any pedestrian travel unsafe in most areas. Residents walk or transport themselves on the street pavement along Halsey, where vehicles traffic zooms by at 35 to 45 miles per hour. There have been the improvements of one flashing beacon crosswalk, but for long stretches, there is no safe way to cross Halsey safely. The goal has always been to provide sidewalks in this area so the pedestrians can walk safely. PBOT has been working on this project for many years, but it continues to be stalled. Rich Newlands had been the PBOT employee who had been working on this project for many years and reassured our community that we would see sidewalks in place after much review by East Portland community members. Dan Layden of PBOT has informed me that Rich Newlands has retired. When his retirement is hired, it will move forward. Mr. Layden told me that the project was 60% design complete and that work would commence in 2020. Our community has heard this sort of assurances many times from PBOT, only to hear that there was an emergency priority, redesign, funding issue, or that there was a delay, etc. Mr. Layden has also informed me the project will include more flashing beacon crosswalks and ADA corner curb ramps. The project will not include sidewalks on most of the south side of Halsey because of the current conflict with Metro, who is responsible for sidewalks around Glendevere. My goal here today is to urge the completion of this project and to assure the community that after 50 years without sidewalks, a major Portland boulevard is now safe for its citizens to walk on. Please give it some priority and funding for completion. My understanding is that most of the funding is dedicated for this project. I have seen it on many committee lists as scheduled to be done. Please advocate for this project.
Thank you. And Commissioner Fritz.
Mr. Granville, thank you for coming in. Have you sent your testimony to Commissioner Udaley's office?
This was sent, yes, I believe
It
so.
was, great, because
Yeah.
I'm sure she and her staff will respond to you.
Yes, and I'll send copies also to PBOT.
Good. And it's your understanding then, Mr. Glanville, that the funding is in place and PBOT has, in your estimation, committed to moving forward with the project?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
There has been money both from the dime tax, plus also other funds that have been scrabbled together to make this happen. It has been funded actually for a couple of years, but it has not been moving forward. It seems to be stalled.
Very good. And I'll follow up with Commissioner Udaley as well.
All right.
Thank you for
Thank you.
being here.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 687, request of Gloria Buchor-Luzader to address council regarding the proposed houseless village on North Richmond Street in St. John's.
Good morning.
Good morning. Show you how dedicated I am. I came by Max.
Very good.
Darn right. There's no parking down here, baby. Good morning.
Morning.
Amanda, Ted, Nick. My name is Gloria Buchor-Luzader. I am a native Portland person. I graduated from James John Elementary School, Roosevelt High School, and Portland State University. I was born in Emmanuel Hospital and carried home by my parents to the St. John's community in North Portland. After working in Oregon, Washington State, South Korea, and China, I returned to St. John's. I am living in my inherited deceased parents' home, built in 1911, a one-bedroom, one-bathroom, 800 square foot cottage. It is St. John's, it is home. I am here today because I truly believe a mistake is being made by placing a hard wall public housing camp on North Richmond Avenue between North Lombard Street and North Central Street. This location is 50 feet from a preschool in a church, 675 feet from James John Elementary School, and 850 feet from the St. John's Public Library. I volunteer at James John 3 mornings a week with first and second graders. These are children who are 5, 6, 7, and 8 years old. Children who walk to school on North Central Street, who sometimes would cut through the preschool parking lot and run across the grassy lot that is being proposed for the Hardwall Public Housing Camp. Please, a major safety factor to consider for the children. I truly believe there are more suitable locations in this city and in St. John's. There are locations that are not near a preschool, an elementary school, and a public library. Please consider the children of St. John's who walk to their school and walk to their library in your final decision. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for being here. Next individual, please, Carla.
Item 688, request of
Okay, so, it's summer and I hoped that I would not have to do this, but I will remind you that that is in violation of council rules. This is a warning, and if I have to ask again, I'm going to have you leave. Next individual, please.
Item 688, request of D. White to address council regarding the failure of the Water Bureau to deliver safe drinking water to its customers.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Dee White. I am sorry and sad to report that Portland's drinking water continues to have one of the highest levels of lead, in fact, in the top 6 for all urban water systems. Last month, Gresham exceeded the federal limit by reporting levels as high as Portland did in 2018. Gresham is a Portland water customer. Last month, Portland Water Bureau reported higher levels than their last 2 monitoring periods, once again violating EPA's directive from 3 years ago to immediately and significantly reduce lead using existing facilities. Portland hovers around and above the federal limit year after year after year. Even at very low-level exposure, the effects of lead on brain development in babies in uteri, infants, and young children are profound and irreversible. There is no cure for this neurotoxin. There is no safe level of lead. It is invisible, tasteless, and odorless. A 2018 study estimates that more than 400,000 adults' deaths in the U.S. every year via cardiovascular and renal disease can be linked to chronic lead exposure. This community has endured chronic levels of lead in our water for years. The Water Commissioner's opinion is that it's property owners' responsibility to prevent lead from leaching into drinking water. They are wrong. Federal law requires public water systems to take action to reduce lead contamination, primarily by treating corrosive water in our homes, schools, parks, and businesses. The law is about correcting faulty treatment, not about faulting customer plumbing. This is your legal responsibility, not ours. The Oregon Health Authority, the regulator, has been letting you guys off the hook for 27 years. Why is this? What kind of hold do you guys have over the regulators? You are not complying with the federal law or the 2016 EPA orders, and all we continue to hear from you and Salem are crickets. Ignoring optimal water treatment and not maintaining the water distribution pipes has simply been kicked down the road with only carefully worded promises to improve lead levels. The silent public health crisis continues. How is this acceptable?
Commissioner Fritz.
Ms. White, thank you very much for making the case for why the lead control treatment plant is necessary. That's later on the agenda today. Obviously, it's a large project that takes time to get done. And so I'm sure that the Water Bureau will be giving a brief summary of the treatment plant and when it's expected to go online. In the meantime, anybody who's concerned about whether their home piping might have lead in it can call 823-4000 and ask for a lead testing kit. That's 503-823-4000. Ask for a lead testing kit. They will send you one in the mail with a free Water Bureau bottle, which you get to keep, a drinking water bottle. I've done it myself, and it's really easy to do, and that way you'll know whether you need to run your pipes for 2 minutes at the beginning before you drink the water. But again, call 823-4000 and we'll send you a lead testing kit if you're at all concerned.
Commissioner, could I ask a clarifying question? Because Ms. White comes in on a regular basis and gives this testimony, and I did some research after the last time she came, and she is correct in that the Water Bureau did testing and found elevated levels of lead. But it is also true that the testing they did was specifically conducted in high-risk homes that they knew used lead solder in the pipes. So is there lead in the drinking water that's coming out of Bull Run, going through the public pipes and then into the homes? Is there lead in that water, or is the lead in the houses that have used lead solder? Because it's my understanding it is the latter, and that the Portland Water Bureau, in fact, has a very aggressive program to help homeowners who do have lead solder pipes in their house, in their private property, to convert those pipes to non-lead solder pipes.
I'm glad you asked me that question, Mayor, because since you assigned me the Water Bureau in September of last year, I have learned so much about our drinking water system. So in fact, the our drinking water system has taken the lead solder out of the entire system, except in the individual residences. Of course, it is expensive to change the fittings, and particularly in rental housing, the landlord may not be willing to do that. But in fact, we're a little bit we're both blessed and cursed by our wonderful Bull Run water, because the Bull Run water is at pH 7, which is exactly neutral, not acid, not alkaline. It turns out that that's actually not good for lead control, and that's why we're building the treatment plant that's going to make the water slightly more alkaline, which then is less likely to leach the lead solder from homes.
So it's not really the water supply that's coming in, it's the piping in the houses reacting with the particular pH of our water.
Correct.
Is that a fair interpretation?
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure
And
we had
even
the
if that is the
context.
case, running the water after it's been standing for 2 minutes, if it's been standing overnight, if you've run it for 2 minutes, then your tap water is then going to be at normal levels. And again, you can test that with the free kits that the Water Bureau will send you. You can ask for 2 kits, one to do after it's been standing and then another one after it's been running for 2 minutes.
All right, that's helpful, I appreciate that, thank you. Last individual, please.
Item 689, request of the Portland Youth Climate Council to address council regarding the climate crisis.
Come on up, good morning. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Good morning, City Council. My name is Peter Salinger, and I'm a senior at Grant High School, and I'm representing the Portland Youth Climate Council, which was created in 2017 with the passing of the 100% renewable energy resolution to advise the city on climate-related issues. I'd like to start off by thanking the city for the public forum on Zenith that you held last week. It's transparency like that boosts the public confidence in our city's resolve towards fighting climate change. We hope it will be the first of many. The issues that we came to testify about today surround the Portland Tree Code. Back in the spring, our council first read an article from the Portland Tribune titled "Woes at Wapato." It highlighted the distressing fact that 3 acres of trees around Smith-and-Bybee Lakes are at risk of being chopped down due to gaps in the Portland Tree Code. These trees are threatened as we speak. Upon taking a closer look at the tree code, we realized that the issue was not just confined to trees at Wapato. In 2011, when the city of Portland was finalizing the tree code, industry put up a last-minute protest claiming that they should be exempt from tree code regulations as there was a shortage of industrial land zoned at the time. The city acquiesced to the pressure, in the end leaving both industrial and commercial zones unprotected, with the promise that the tree code would be updated when land quotas were met. That day has come and gone. The city of Portland did an economic opportunities analysis in June 2016 and found the required amount of industrial and commercial land had been met. However, these areas continued to be exempt from the Portland Tree Code and are to this day. The industrial and commercial exemptions have left some of Portland's most valuable resources vulnerable, and in the face of the climate crisis, this is not only unacceptable, but downright dangerous. In our fight against climate change, trees are some of our most valuable assets. The city of Portland should not be in the business of giving industrial and commercial interests unnecessary protection at the expense of our environment. In addition to the industrial and commercial exemptions, we would like to bring one other issue to your attention. The provision in the tree code which boosts protections and mitigation requirements for the largest trees in Portland has a sunset clause set for December 31st, 2019. Allowing the sunset clause to remain would cause irreparable damage to Portland's urban environment. We have heard recent rumors that it is now very likely that the trees at Wapato will come down. It is up to the City Council to prevent further unnecessary environmental destruction like this. We have testified before the Urban Forestry Commission and met with Jen Cairo and other city staffers, but in the end, it is up to you to put a stop to this problem. The Portland City Council calls on you to remove the tree code exemptions on industrial and commercial zones, exemptions that have existed far past their needed expiration date. In addition, we are asking you to remove the sunset clause on the mitigation requirements for large trees, ensuring that Portland maintains and protects its environment for years to come. Thank you, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you for being here, appreciate it. Nice job. There is no consent agenda today, so we'll just move into the first item on the regular agenda, please. S690.
Amend acquisition of public art code to expand eligible uses of the 2% funds, explicitly prioritize underserved communities, and clarify city accountability.
Colleagues, this is a second reading. There's already been a presentation and public testimony. Is there any further business on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Fritz?
Thank you, Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Daly and all the staff who've worked on this project. I wasn't here for the hearing, but I've reviewed the record and I'm pleased to vote aye.
Fish?
First of all, I want to just be clear what this does. It prioritizes underserved communities' access to art. It expands the eligible uses of the 2% funds to include creative space and more clearly allow activities like artists in residence. And it clarifies Portland City Code to make explicit the roles and responsibilities of the council, the eligible bureaus, and the Art Council. So it has a very specific purpose. I want to thank Commissioner Daly and particularly her arts advisor, Polly, for their strong partnership. I want to thank Tracy Schreiber in my office and Jamie Dunphy. And I also want to thank our friends at RAC, including Madison Cario, the new executive director, for their partnership. This is a step in the right direction, which gives us more flexibility with the 2% funds and allows us to advance both our equity agenda and our affordable art space agenda. And today I'm pleased to vote aye.
Wheeler?
I'd like to thank Commissioner Fish and Commissioner Daly. I think this is great policy, and I agree with what you just said, Commissioner. It definitely moves us in the right direction, both in terms of living up to the oft-stated goals around equity. This is one more concrete action that we can take to actually deliver resources in support of those equity goals. And I concur that I think this will be very helpful in terms of maintaining affordable art space. I'm happy to vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 691, please.
Accept negotiated price of $8,185,616 from James W. Fowler Company for the construction of the Leach Upper Garden project.
Colleagues, this is a
Commissioner
great
Fish.
milestone in the Leach Botanical Garden project. Leach is a city landmark and East Portland's hidden gem. But thanks to this project, it won't be hidden much longer. The Leach Garden project will make this beautiful place truly a world-class destination, joining our city's other famous gardens like the International Rose Test Garden, the Japanese Garden, the Lansu Chinese Garden, and the Crystal Springs Rhododendron Garden. The redeveloped garden will include incredible new spaces like a pollinator garden, aerial tree walk, and more. I want to thank our partners who are contributing to this, including Metro, Prosper Portland, and generous donors who have contributed to Leach Garden Friends. Colleagues, in March, Council approved an alternative to the traditional low bid process because of the unique needs of this project. Today, we are being asked to consider awarding a contract to James F. Fowler Company, and we have a presentation from Lester Spittler, Chief Procurement Officer, and Ross Swanson, Parks Project Manager. Gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you. As Commissioner Fish said, I'm Lester Spittler, the Chief Procurement Officer. City Council adopted Ordinance 189427 on March 20th that approved an exemption to the competitive low bid process. We also proposed issuing a two-step negotiated RFP process, which was something new for the city. The two-step nature is the first step is a request for qualifications. We sought out prime contractors and subcontractors that could meet the requirements of the project. And then we qualified those prime contractors and subcontractors and then issued a request for proposals as the second step to those pre-qualified contractors. So on May 6th, we issued the second step request for proposals. We received 2 responses as a result of that. Those proposals were reviewed and evaluated by a 5-member evaluation committee, including 1 member of the Minority Evaluator Program. And the evaluation committee selected James W. Fowler as the highest scoring proposer. For this project, the city has established a 20% aspirational goal for State of Oregon certified disadvantaged, minority-owned, women-owned, emerging small businesses, and service-disabled veteran-owned businesses for subcontractor work as well as supplier utilization. James W. Fowler has made a commitment of 34.64% utilization of certified subcontractors and material suppliers. 22.98% of that is for disadvantaged business enterprises, and 11.66 is to emerging small businesses. The breakdown of that work: there's a subcontractor, Eagle Striping Services. They are certified as an emerging small business. They are going to perform striping work. The ownership is Caucasian female. Another subcontractor, Igami Construction, is a disadvantaged, minority-owned, and emerging small business. They're going to do some signage work for the project, and they are Asian Pacific and female. Eugene William Construction is a disadvantaged, minority-owned, and emerging small business. They'll perform excavation work. They are Native American male-owned. Faison Construction will perform concrete, African-American male-owned company. Innovative Manufacturing and Design is an emerging small business. They'll perform metal fabrication. They're a Caucasian male-owned company. Regional Traffic Management is a disadvantaged, minority-owned, and emerging small business. They will perform traffic control, and they are Asian Pacific male-owned. And Treecology is emerging small business, and they will perform arborist work, and they are a Caucasian male-owned company as well. In addition to the 34.64%, since proposals were received, there is an additional subcontractor that James W. Fowler is going to use that has become certified by the state of Oregon. That's Pacific Landscape Services. They're a woman-owned business enterprise, and they will be performing landscape services, and they are a Caucasian female-owned company. So with that increase, that raises the percentage of utilization up to 55.28%, which is, double what our aspirational goal is. That's phenomenal. We're really happy about that. James W. Fowler is located in Dallas, Oregon. They are not certified. They are in compliance with all of the city's contract requirements. And with that, we recommend that you accept this report and authorize execution of this contract. Ross and I are here for any questions.
Yeah, the original estimate was what, and how far above the estimate is this particular bid?
So originally it was $6.7 million, and the bid came in at $8.7 million. We were able to negotiate that down to 8.1, which you see here today, after the two-step process in working in good faith with the contractor.
And what explains when you look at the bids that came in and you debrief this, why did the bids come in well above the estimates?
It's a good question. On the large scale marketplace right now, there's a lot of public money in the marketplace. It's actually going in the ground as we speak this summer. So trying to get good bidders who have the capacity to take on a project like this at the right price is probably issue one. And that trickles its way down as we're negotiating the costs down with the subcontractors. You can get Fowler to move off of their numbers, but they were having issues getting the subcontractors. Again, with the firms that they got as a subcontractor, they're smaller firms, and their prices were sort of somewhat fixed. That's item one. Item two is we do have a lot of steel in the project, so there's, although there's a lot of speculation in the steel market, so those numbers were not able to move very much. And then finally, timeline. We've requested that this be done in 1 year. That is not an easy task for the amount of work that's being done. So the contractors, as well as the subcontractors, plan on gearing up to a larger scale, and they will be working on this project 6 days a week to make sure that we get the timeline done.
You mentioned the cost of steel, and you said it was speculative. Is steel one of those commodities impacted by the tariff discussions?
I asked that question, and they were hesitant to answer that directly. That adds to the speculation, but I think to the most part, they just went back to the marketplace. This is a landscape project predominantly, but it does have a lot of steel. The buildings that you're seeing going up all over the city, I think there are 12 cranes right now in the city. That's driving the steel just from a supply and demand issue.
So the good news is our construction industry is working at near full capacity. The bad news is that builds in some inflation in terms of bidding costs.
Yes, exactly.
So we're generating systems development charges on a lot of construction work that's going on around the city, which helps us invest in our parks, but at the same time, our costs are going to go up a little bit.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much.
So to Commissioner Fish's point, everybody's bidding a little higher because they're anticipating a roll-up in the construction input costs, predominantly steel and concrete and labor, of course. And so when you got to the point where it came back at 8.8, you negotiated it down about 8% by my quick and dirty calculation. What are you actually negotiating down? Is that just who's going to take the risk for the potential increase in construction inputs? Or are you actually reducing scope?
That's a good question. So your first characterization is always, no matter what change order you're having, you're trying to figure out who's taking on the risk, whether it's owner or contractor. I will say Fowler and their team have been excellent to work with in those 2 weeks of negotiations. They've been pretty transparent, and I would say the process that we have done added a lot of merit to that ability to be transparent. And then, sorry, I'm drawing a blank here. There was the balance of risk. What was it? Oh, scope. We actually, so the big item that came out of this scope was a misinterpretation of our warranty. The landscape contractor had assumed quite a large one-year obligation that they were going to have staff out there sort of making sure everything is, at a premium level for the entire year. We have the benefit on this project that we have Leach Garden friends out there who have a huge volunteer staff as well as professional gardens on staff. So when we started comparing notes on who thought they were taking care of what, we were able to reduce a lot of that scope. It's not scope that's actually going to go on the ground. In this case, it's just maintenance scope. There's some other issues and small items, and we've also identified future savings just from timing for this to get under contract. We've agreed to defer those additional savings talks to hopefully August 1 when we're under contract.
Very good. I'll entertain a
Move
motion.
the report.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Fish, a second from Commissioner Fritz. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Commissioner Fish, you've been a champion for Leach Gardens as long as I've known you, and you must be very delighted that this project is moving forward. Ron Swanson, thank you so much. Ron, I did it again. Ross Swanson. Delightful having, especially when I was in charge of Portland Parks, to have Portland Parks and Rec done in a very different way, and I really appreciate the work that you do to make sure that everything gets done correctly, on time, on budget, and great minority and women participation. Thank you, Lester Spittler, for that as well. Aye.
Fish.
Well, Commissioner Fritz, right back at you. You've been a champion of the Leach Garden. It is the hidden gem in East Portland. It will be one of the great attractions in East Portland when this investment is concluded. And as we heard in the presentation, there's a sense of urgency in terms of doing the work, because in June of 2020, Portland is hosting the American Public Garden Movement, and we'll have the most important people in that movement here for a convention, and we want to show off all of our great gardens, including Leach Botanical Gardens. So thank you for an excellent report. I vote aye.
Wheeler.
I'm happy to support this. I vote aye. The report's accepted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, 692, also a second reading.
Assess property for system development charge contracts, private plumbing loan contracts, and safety net loan deferral contracts.
Colleagues, this is a second reading. We've already heard a presentation and taken public testimony. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Fritz.
Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 693, please.
Authorize the Water Bureau to acquire certain property and easements necessary for construction of the corrosion control improvements project through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority as a last resort.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the project that we were hearing about or alluding to earlier to do the treatment facility, and so I'll turn it over to staff to give a presentation.
Great. My name is Ben Gossett. I'm the right-of-way manager at the Portland Water Bureau. Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm here to talk to you about 5 properties where the Water Bureau will be acquiring easements. And on one of those properties, we will also be acquiring a small parcel in fee. These improvements are related to our corrosion control project that will reduce the corrosion of lead in the household plumbing. We have a PowerPoint for you. just a moment, you'll see a map that'll give you the approximate locations of the easements. Incidentally, most of the easements are being revised within their existing location. Some of these easements are,
Yeah, if you can just grab the whole laptop and bring it closer to you if you want.
got it. Oops.
Or the forward arrow works too. There you go.
There we go. So there's our project. You can see we're near our existing Lusted Hill treatment facility. The yellow dots on the map indicate where the Water Bureau will be acquiring permanent easements. As I mentioned, most of those easements are being revised within their existing limits. We're doing that because many of them are quite old. The Water Bureau has had facilities in this area for over 100 years, and we've added new facilities incrementally over that time. One of the easements will be expanded by about 15 feet on either side. That makes room for new pipelines, construction, and maintenance. And then on that map, the pink dot is a fee acquisition of about 1.66 acres of property. It's a particularly strategic location for the Water Bureau. It's one of the few locations in our system where our conduits all run together. And then on the next page, I'll show you some next steps. This ordinance is the first step in a process. The next step in the process is for the Water Bureau to hire an appraiser. All of the interests that are the subject of this ordinance will be appraised. Each of the owners is invited to accompany our appraiser on an inspection of the property. The appraiser will prepare written reports that outline the value. The Water Bureau will make offers to each of the owners based on that appraisal. We'll offer the appraised value. Period of time is established both by statute, and the Water Bureau allows additional time for negotiation to resolve problems with each of the owners. And then finally, this ordinance does authorize, or with your approval, will authorize the Water Bureau to file with the county for eminent domain. But I would like to stress that that's a last resort. We have an excellent track record of negotiating with owners and reaching agreements. I believe that's it for the presentation.
And I'm Teresa Elliott, Chief Engineer, and we're here to answer any questions.
And colleagues, I didn't have my talking points in the right place, so wanted to stress that this is a process, and that I've had ongoing discussions with the Transportation Department as well over the process of eminent domain. If council hasn't authorized it, then maybe staff feels uncomfortable approaching property owners with a specific, here's how much we need, because we haven't authorized it yet. On the other hand, this is the time that council is authorizing the project, and so it seems reasonable to me that property owners would be specifically notified that we're thinking of taking 70,000 square feet. And so I think that there are some further discussions to be had with the property owners, and you just mentioned that will happen. There's other issues in terms of how those negotiations happened, which thank you, Ben, for discussing that. I learned when I was on the Planning Commission that in some cases property owners want to have the condemnation because of the tax benefits of that versus a straight sale, and so that's called a friendly condemnation. May or may not be, it sounds like over the past many years that hasn't happened very often, because usually the terms are so favorable that even with paying the tax, the condemnation is not necessary. But just wanted to let my colleagues know that I'm a little concerned about how we do things in general in the city, not just in the Water Bureau, and that I want to make sure that the property owners have enough time to get their concerns and questions answered. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance, so we may or may not bring it back next week, depending on how those conversations go.
Thank you.
And it's my understanding that some of the properties that you were discussing already have easements, is that correct?
In fact, all of these properties have existing Water Bureau easements. And again, those have been acquired over more than 100 years. And so those are the easements in most cases that we'll be updating. We have a policy of bringing these old easements up to our current standard when we come across them with a capital improvement project such as this one.
Okay, thank you.
And we heard earlier about the need for the lead corrosion control facility. Is there anywhere else that this facility could be put other than in this location?
The improvements to the Lusted Hill facility that will include the corrosion control facilities, the new facilities that we're building, these are really in addition to or being added to our existing facilities that are already in place. So the short answer to your question is no, because they will be added to existing facilities.
And they need to be in.
And we're specifically connecting to the existing pipes at that location.
Right.
So, no,
We couldn't put it somewhere else.
no.
Thank you.
All right, very good, thank you. We'll move on to public testimony. Carla, I understand there's a number of people who'd like to testify.
Yes, we have 4 people signed up.
Very good. 3 minutes each, please name for the record, and the microphones move around about 6 inches away is good. Carla will read your name.
Okay, first 3, please come on up, are Lightning, D. White, and Charles Bridgecrane Johnson.
Ms. White, would you like to start, please?
You want me to go first, Lightning, or you want to go? Go on.
Okay.
I called your name.
Fine. My name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Superhumanity. I always have a real problem with eminent domain, the government stepping in on nuisance liens, foreclosures. So I have a problem with this. Now, if the private property owners are happy with it, fine. Have a happy day. But I don't think they are, and that's why we're at the table here to propose that in the event, and this is a real strategic move here on negotiating, in the event you don't agree to our appraiser that we'll bring out to your property and our number that we provide to you, we'll go into eminent domain. So really, you might want to take our first offer and just understand, if you don't, we're going to end up with your property anyway. Now, what's interesting here too is that you have easements on 4 of the properties and 1 you're purchasing, and I assume the one you're purchasing is the Lusted Road Farms property, because when you're looking at the square footage analysis on these tracts, they're at about 72,000 on Lusted, and then you have for another tract, the Sandy River property, the DS track is 164,000. My position is that if you're going to do eminent domain in this area, forget the easements, purchase it, all the properties that everybody have. Combine them all together, be equitable, be fair, and give them the market rate. Now, here's the problem that I have. Since you're going to be so hostile, which you are, you're just hostile to these people, I'm not only going to ask for market value, I'm going to ask for double the value because of your hostility on eminent domain. There's no reason to do eminent domain if I'm talking to you, Mayor Wheeler, and you're the owner, and I say, can we just buy your property? We're going to be doing a project here. We'll go under contract, and let's move this deal forward. You say, fine. But you're coming in hostile to me and to them, and you're saying, no, if you don't accept our offer, we go right to a court, we go right to a judge, we'll take your property because we're the big, bad government. We can foreclose on your property for nuisance liens. We can come in and do eminent domain, and we don't care about your private property rights. Well, guess what? Appraisal value, double the price, because of the way that you're being hostile on these negotiations. Double the price. I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy with this to move forward. And I vote no because of your hostility. Thank you.
Good morning.
My name is Dee. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
It's good.
My name is Dee White. I'm very much against your plans to take this property from these 5 parties in order to lay pipes for a $20 million treatment project that has a 5-year lifespan. According to your plans, once your other $500 million treatment plant is in place in 2027, plans are to close down entirely and abandon this treatment facility, including the pump station and the pipes. That's a 5-year lifespan for this brand-new facility, a pump station and pipes running through these properties. And all of these people's land will have been taken and torn up, new pipes laid. All of this will be shut down and abandoned. $20 million of ratepayer money wasted. How can y'all possibly be justified taking a toll on these parties like this and doing this to these parties as well as the damage that you're doing to the greater public good? I'm going to read from a Portland Water Bureau status report on this project that was put out last July, a year ago. Portland Water Bureau is aware of the short-term life of the potential of the short-term life of this current project, the cost impact of this facility, and the potential for stranded assets. So y'all are aware of it. Then it goes on to say that you're going to look and try to find some way to transfer the property and the new facility over to the treatment plant, to the filtration plant. And so then later, 2 months later, at a pub meeting, which is the oversight committee for the Water Bureau, which, by the way, half of them resigned last month because of perceived bias and conflict of interest. Anyway, at the pub meeting, another Water Bureau employee said, oh, well, the only thing that's going to be available to move over is some storage components, because many of the feed equipment is going to reach its end of life. So again, you're going to be building this plant, laying these pipes, and closing it in 5 years. How in the world was this the best alternative, given that the EPA 3 years ago directed the Water Bureau to immediately take action to reduce the lead using already existing infrastructure? That's infrastructure that's at Lusted Hill that's already doing the corrosion control. Y'all had expanded it y'all expanded it 4 or 5 years ago when you were trying to foist fluoride on everybody, and we voted it down, but you expanded it anyway. So it's there, it's available, and shockingly, even now, after 3 years of EPA telling you, you're still failing to deliver us safe water. Again, I'm against taking of these parties for a temporary project that has a 5-year lifespan.
Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you, Ms. White. Obviously, Ms. D. White is the expert on lead here among all of us that are gathered to talk about this right now. With this project, there's on the connected 17-page PDF, which is mostly the maps of the properties that will be affected by sending pipes to this facility, which we hear is only going to have a 5-year service life. And we need to really, I think, she mentioned pub. We didn't get a chance to fully say Portland Utilities Board. And it's sad to hear about the resignations and staff changes there, because it makes me think that we might actually need, for a change, the Cascade Policy Institute, which is usually wrong, but they should probably come and look at the overall running of the Portland Water Bureau and compare the capital expenditures incurred by the Portland Water Bureau on a pro-rata basis with the public water utility in New York, a public water utility that has beautiful open reservoirs still functioning. So on this particular Lusted Hill facility, where is the outside advice that tells us a 5-year, $20 million facility is going to give us that slightly more alkaline water, and that magically in 5 years will have gone into all the homes that have lead solder and fixed that problem? I don't know. It seems like there's a missing overarching guidance of how we're going to deliver safe water in the most cost-effective manner, which is one of the reasons that the Water Bureau in the city was sued before. I didn't particularly agree with all the aspects of that suit, but the city lost, at least in part. And so, it looks like ratepayers are going to have to look to other advocacy organizations, if not the Portland Utilities Board or Cascade Policy Institute, somebody else who's going to do outside analysis of the habit that seems to be developing. The Water Bureau moves around to different commissioners, but for a place that's dealing with water, it seems pretty easy that burning money there. So I hope that some outside watchdogs will possibly be able to co-sign that this is a good investment, or explain to us why there are much better ways the Water Bureau can deliver safe drinking water without this expenditure and the impact on these property owners. Thank you.
Very good. And Carla, was there one other
The
individual?
last person who signed up is Cynthia Frazier.
Very good, thank you.
Hello. I'm an attorney with Garvey Schubert Bear in Portland, Oregon, and I'm representing Lusted Farms. I've been hired since Monday, so I'm getting up to speed, there's a lot to learn here. So in full disclosure, I did have a conversation this morning with City Attorney Karen Monahan, who's here, so I'm still learning. I presented a letter yesterday, which hopefully you have received, and I'm giving you this, my background very briefly, just so you understand that I'm approaching this from the pre-condemnation, pre-resolution standpoint. I was a Department of Justice attorney. That's how I started out, doing exclusively condemnation. And I then, in 2005, went to Garvey Schubert Bear, where I now represent a lot of governments. And what I do for them is make sure they're following the Condemnation Procedures Act. That's primarily what I do. And then I do also represent some property owners, which is why I'm here today. So my big concern here is whether or not you're going to meet the legal test of least private injury and greatest public good with respect to my client, Lusted Farms. Based on what I've learned and been told, which is changing, he only received notice that his property was going to be taken on July 2nd, and that it would be at this hearing that there would be a resolution for eminent domain. He told me that he does not have any background information on whether or not this property is the only location for he's the 1.6 acres in fee. He does not know that. He has not seen any plans. He spoke with, and I actually spoke with yesterday, Monday afternoon, the agents that was actually going to be acquiring the property pursuant to the Condemnation Procedures Act didn't even know what was going to go on this property himself. It's apparently, still in design, but it's like secret. So my concern is, are we putting the horse and the cart in the wrong spot here? Has my client received adequate notice of what's going to happen out there? Has it been properly vetted that indeed this 1.66 acres is actually the correct spot for it to go? Otherwise, you're subjecting yourself as a legislative body to, did you have enough informed decision to pass this resolution that indeed this location is the least private injury and the greatest public good? And that's what I'm asking you to do, to pause here, give my client an opportunity to get a little bit of information, for me to get a little bit more information, and for us to evaluate whether or not you're going to meet that legal test. So thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Fish, did you have a question?
No, my understanding is Commissioner Fritz said that following this hearing, she'd evaluate whether to bring this back next week or at some future time. It would be inappropriate for us to engage an attorney in a public forum on this question. She's made an argument. We need to get confidential legal advice and then decide how to proceed. But I think it would be inappropriate for us to engage the merits of that argument before we get legal advice.
No, and I appreciate that. We're just looking for more information, and I appreciate, this is your agency, and I've actually did work for the Water Bureau years ago on the Big Pipe project. I was involved in the relocation of some very complicated things. So I do understand both sides, but I'm requesting a pause here so my client feels they have had full notice and opportunity to understand what's going there, and I understand whether or not, indeed, this is the only location, or it makes logical, and I can explain to my client so that I'm not trying to stop the project right now. I'm just trying to understand it, get him to understand it, and try to hopefully reach some type of a resolution so we do move forward with the normal Condemnation Procedures Act. And no one's ever happy when their property is taken by eminent domain. I know that. We all know that. And it's a process.
Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you. I'm feeling really fortunate that you were engaged for this property, having had all of those different backgrounds and experiences. And certainly, I'm very willing to give you the time you need to talk with Karen Moynihan, the Water Bureau, until you have more time to understand, to get the facts of what's going on, what's not going on. So we'll look forward to talking with you and your clients over the next week at least. And if we need to extend it, I'm happy to do that.
Well, I would greatly appreciate that, and I would appreciate a little bit more time than 1 week if I could possibly
yes.
had it. Thank you.
Or I guess let's leave it that if you're satisfied within a week, you can let me know. If not, we'll assume that it's going to go out a little bit further.
Thank you. I've got to satisfy a client too, so
Right.
that's always, all right, thank you.
I understand that. Thank you so much for being here.
Very good, thank you. Anything else on this? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, 694. We are going to move it, but if you could read it, please, Carla.
694, authorize exchange agreement with the USDA Forest Service to execute a land exchange in the Bull Run watershed.
Colleagues, land exchanges by ordinance require 4 votes in order to be authorized, and therefore we're going to move this to July 31st, where we'll have the appropriate number of commissioners present. Item number 695.
Amend city code to update oath of office requirements.
Colleagues, this is a second reading. We've already had the presentation and public testimony, but it is also my understanding that there may be an amendment offered.
Correct. The auditor's coming.
Very good. And Madam Auditor, coming up. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. We have an amendment on this item at the request of Commissioner Hardesty, and a memo has been distributed to your offices and attached to the agenda. And the amendment is striking the word private for private police officers and special as descriptors of the types of police officers who would be subject to the oath of office.
So I move the amendment.
We have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Commissioner Fritz moves, Commissioner Fish seconds. Just out of curiosity, I know that last week on the fly, we didn't have the time to be able to properly define those terms. Did we figure out, are these historical legacies, or where did those definitions actually come from? Do we know at this point?
We asked the Police Bureau and checked in with the City Attorney's Office about whether or not this would pose problems to strike that language. And they came back to us and said that it was no problem to strike them, so I'm assuming that they're just obsolete terms.
That
This
would
is
be
very
my
old
guess.
code.
Yeah, good. Okay, very good. We will take testimony on the amendment if there is anybody who wants to testify specifically to the amendment. Seeing the none, please call the roll on the amendment.
Fritz?
Well, I'm absolutely delighted that Commissioner Hardesty shares my delight in reading all of the details and making sure that code amendments in particular, as well as other things, are accurate. And thank you to the auditor for being willing to accept the amendment. Aye.
Fish?
Aye.
Wheeler?
Aye. The amendment's adopted. Any further business before I move this? This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading as amended. Thank you, Madam Auditor. 696, please.
Amend Portland Policy Documents Code to update and clarify repository procedures.
Also a second reading. Any further business? Please call the roll.
Fritz?
So I asked for this to be pulled from the consent agenda while I was gone so that I could make some comments at the vote. And I certainly appreciate the auditor's desire to update and clarify the Portland policy documents and how they get into code. There's a lot of outdated language in the current code. I am a little concerned in reading the amendments, which I agree clean up the old code, that's not actually what we do for City Council. And it hasn't been my understanding, for example, that even ordinances have to say whether or not they're binding city policy. And I know that for Commissioner Fish and me for the last 10 plus years, it's been it was my understanding that ordinances were binding, resolutions are not unless they say that they are binding. With the changes that are outlined in this, that are detailed in this revision, it says that all ordinances and resolutions have to say either it is binding policy or it's not binding policy. And I think that may result in some confusion for ordinances which were passed in the past with the understanding that they would be binding policy, and which under this revision wouldn't be because they didn't say that they were. And so what I'm proposing, colleagues, is that I'd like to lead a task force or a staff group to look at the revisions as proposed as a technical matter that the auditor has proposed, and as a policy matter have a discussion on is that really what we want to have going forward or not. And it may be, but it may not be. I just hadn't been briefed on this before it appeared on the consent agenda, and I think it's worthy of a little more time, especially as you both look at going into the Charter Commission in 2021. It would be helpful to have some council discussion prior to that as to what do we want to be binding, how do we want to denote when things are binding city policy and how do we not.
Mayor, I have a suggestion.
Commissioner Fish?
So Commissioner Fritz has signaled that she's not prepared to support this matter today, which means we don't have the votes.
No, actually, I did. I said I would support it today, and that we would do this other because this is clarify. I'm absolutely proposing to vote for it today.
This.
Yes. I'm also saying that I don't think that what this is, it may or may not be actually what we want to have happen. And rather than delay all of the other more technical and kind of removing outdated language, I don't want to do that. I don't want to revisit the whole thing. There's just a few pieces of it that I think would benefit for some more discussion. It may be that at the end of that discussion that we decide to leave it as we're passing today.
Well, so you and I are scheduled to do, we have a sit-down, I think, later this week.
Right.
If we vote this out today, I'd be happy to have that conversation with you and know more about it. I'm just not prepared to authorize a task force until I have better understanding of the subject.
Oh, I didn't think you, I would assume that you would be the second person who would be most interested in having that process. Obviously, no commissioner needs a council authorization to set up a working group to revise code at any time. So I'm looking forward to having that conversation, and I vote aye.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I think that's a worthy conversation to have, and I appreciate your taking the lead on that. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. And last but not least, 697, please.
Update city code to revise the definitions of decision or determination and administrative act for purposes of administrative appeals.
Also a second reading. Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Fritz.
Auditor Mary Hall Caballero has made several really great improvements over the time that she's been here and that she and I have served together for the citizens of the community of Portland. I think her revisions to the administrative appeals process has to stand out as one of the top 5 things that you've done. I think it's really great that you and the Ombudsman recognize the challenges of people who want to appeal administrative decisions and made sure that they would be able to do that without great cost. And so I very much appreciate these changes. Aye.
Fish.
Aye.
Wheeler.
A lot of detail work, but I appreciate it as well. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. We're adjourned.